Given that the TED Talk is Space in a Shrinking World, we wanted to talk about the space of a university in a shrinking world. And given the fact that we're all witnessing one of the most dramatic downsizing eras of our state's public educational history, we might more appropriately title our talk, The Incredible Shrinking Public University in a Shrinking World. Okay, so, and so this moment begs all of us who do research and teach at the university, such as I do, how might we bring the public university back into the expansive mode through the means and resources we have available to us? Therefore, our joint site-specific talk today is entitled The Space of the Public University in a Shrinking World, Public Research, Participatory Planning, and Placemaking. We are here at UCSB, one of the largest public universities in the state of California, and part of the perhaps biggest research system in the world. Most of the University of California system, built in the 1950s, were designed as self-contained fortresses for learning, where the space of the university resembled more a gated community than a place for the public to have low-cost access to an education. We are fulfilling this legacy of spatial privilege through our increasingly privatized and what you might say corporatized research agenda, despite our core mission to serve the public good. And so here we are in Isla Vista. We have, between those gates of the university, we have a local condition in which University of California, Santa Barbara resides, which is this highly dense, unincorporated village of about more than 80% students who live in and about the university and go in and out of the research environment over the course of their transit for years. Meanwhile, the faculty, there's more than 1,000 of us, who actually oftentimes get deeply embedded in our research, or we fly over our local situation and go elsewhere far and wide to do that research. And then you have, between the gates again, you have the student population who studies and learns on the one hand, and this is an example of Isla Vista students having a party on the beach and inviting all their friends last year. So you have this incredibly dense situation that we have here, and I just want to say that this is one of the most unique environments because of this density. It's one of the most interesting laboratories for research. This is our dean, David Marshall, and I just want to show you he's mingling in the context of all these young people as a administrator, our dean of humanities and fine arts, and he's at an opening that we had some time ago. And he made a very, I think, provocative and profound observation about the structure of the university and a kind of spatial and generational dilemma that we face. And he said that, we have 21st century students, and then we have your 20th century curriculum that we're working from, and then we have a 19th century bureaucracy. So that collapse, and I gotta say that sort of summarizes it all, and then faculty resides somewhere in between, okay? And I would attest to that. So this notion, as these previous speakers said, this connecting the dots, and I think for us it's, how do you connect these dots in real space in real time? And obviously, we're known as the interdisciplinary campus of the whole system, and it's this notion of knowledge sectors actually collaborating, the notion of interdisciplinarity, and what available resources and intellectual cargo do we have that we could cluster into these knowledge systems, and connect them, okay? And then from there, we think about perhaps what happens when we're dealing with, when we have a public right next door, how might we engage that public and take all of that currency that is being produced out of the university as research and the kind of intellectual and human capital that we have through our students and our faculty, and connect it up. Well, someone talked about that, the connectors and the climbers. We at the university are encouraged to climb a ladder, an academic ladder, as tenured researchers with R, the capital R for research, and then teaching, and then we get softer, and then we get into public service. And so as we go up the ladder, the public gets lost. But I'm sort of making the point, as is Seetha, that we want to figure out a way for it to be a connective bridge rather than a ladder for all of us. And so I'm going to have Seetha. I just want to say Seetha was brought in a year ago to come in with a completely nonpartisan view of this little community. She's from Harvard. She was trained as an architect and a planner. She's originally from India, and she landed in Isla Vista, and we're going to hear a little bit about her observations of our community, okay?
When I saw the topic of today's discussion, space in a shrinking world, I looked at myself and realized I'm a product of it, a product of the global world. For I've traveled from India to partake in the promise of the West, and here I stand before you today to talk about a particular, small, unique town, a dot on the globe. In today's age of globalization, many would evoke the oft-quoted phrase, "the world is flat." But ladies and gentlemen, here I am to argue that more than ever before, place matters. Place matters because networks and flows could be global, but it is our everyday spaces that we're directly connected with, spaces that are available and accessible to us, where we can work at intimate scales to impact change. And to tell you one such story of engagement, I ask you to embark on no long journey, but instead just take a few steps from where we're sitting now over to our neighboring town, the town of Isla Vista. And at the end of this story, I'd like to share with you lessons from this immersive experience that have shaped my spatial consciousness, understanding that space is economic and social capital, a key anchor to living, and how perhaps a strategy for a particular place could be applied in the process of any local condition. As a university-adjacent community, Ivy has many parallels, but it has attributes that make it a unique petri dish. It is one of the densest towns west of the Mississippi. And perhaps for the people who don't know this place, you're imagining a diverse, heterogeneous community. But in fact, what adds an interesting demographic twist is the predominance of 18 to 24-year-olds. This resultant lack of an ownership base leaves the narrative of this place to be scripted by its transitory student population. The manifestation of this on the social scene is an interesting juxtaposition. For on the one side, Ivy is a perfect small town, but when it stages those large events, it competes in scale to many dense cities. And well, if this hasn't added up to be unique enough, it has another political layer which has huge tangible and intangible impacts on its functioning. Ivy is an unincorporated community, and seldom is this autonomy liberating. For all practical purposes, it is nobody's baby. This political positioning and the lack of a single entity has led to the many agents and agencies, each with their individual preferences in the shaping of Ivy. In an effort to register all of these micro perspectives, I went to what John Kaliski calls citizen experts to grasp all of the specific goals and all of the collective threads. As you would imagine, they were quick to point out the manifold challenges of this place. And you have to believe me when I say, at the end of exhausting interviewing of 80-odd stakeholders, the list I found myself with was very, very long. But I soon realized, though, that the number of problems was not the only issue, but in fact, the complex interdependencies. And when I tried to mind map these interwoven realities, this is what I got. And perhaps now you perceive what I felt the enormity and extent of issues waiting to be addressed in my year-long, in other words, very short stint. Complex problems could have complex solutions. But then again, aren't we doubling the complexity? So how about we envision a scenario where instead of multiple solutions for multiple challenges, a single, simple solution has multiple lasting impacts? And how can these impacts be catalysts for change? Can they be demonstration models? Can they show us alternative spatial configurations to what is currently unsuccessful and inefficient? To test this, I take you to two areas in IV, one downtown and the other Del Playa. Downtown, predictably the focus of all investment, but unfortunately, unlike what you would imagine, it is not very active, especially by evening and night. And on the other hand, you have Del Playa, silent by day, vibrant by night. And this street, physically not the most attractive street, but arguably the more successful one. So in essence, if the infrastructural potential is downtown and the human potential is in DP, can this project envision a symbiotic relationship between these two zones? And could this creatively address what was resonant with most of the stakeholders? Two main issues, IV's languishing business district and the late night party scene on DP. And could the revealing of these possibilities through hitherto unexplored linkages render a more legible, more vibrant sense of place, a place where zones are not isolated, but in fact their potential is tapped for the interactive and complementary nature of their spatial specificities? One way to test this would be through the creation of pilot projects that are reciprocal and foster holistic connectivities between the two hubs. A simple beginning could be through the expanding of programming activities downtown, especially by evening and night, and encouraging the businesses who struggle to make a profit in the day cycle to satellite out their businesses onto DP by night. The university can play a crucial role, for it has the third and most important potential, resources. Institutional support to animate these schemes in terms of moving on-site programming out into IV, encouraging students to participate in the creation of these pilot projects could go a long way in impacting sustainable change. This project hopes to plant the seeds of change by creating a simple yet profound shift, a shift in thinking, where we understand, first, that our community is a petri dish where unique experiments can happen. Second, opening a new chapter in university community engagement. And third, in its execution by co-opting strategies from diverse disciplines, arts, design, planning, geography, technology, blur boundaries, and break unyielding stereotypes to reveal new combinatory possibilities. And while Kim will talk about those details a little bit more in terms of engaging the community, I'd like to share with you the lessons from this immersive experience that have shaped my consciousness. First, be exhaustive. A place has many particularities, and it's imperative to chronicle every one of them, for they accrue in interesting ways to make the narrative of the place. Be inclusive. Collective engagement enables the scripting of multiple scenarios. The community is best equipped to sketch a shared vision, and therefore the planning process must repose the power in them. It would not be an understatement to say that every single opinion matters. Retain the complexity. Communities are complex creatures, and if we want to develop alternative scenarios, we have to map this in all of its reality. Keep it simple, for I've been told simplicity is the direct result of profound thought. Envision the unexplored, arguably the most valuable contribution we can create as creative problem solvers. And finally, efficient, great ideas can get caught up in bureaucratic impediments. But if we want to impact long-term change, the sure and simple way to do it is to harness the power of the temporary. For effective pilot projects can break rigid structures, even those such as land use and zoning. And yes, baby steps do ultimately take us to our long-term visions. As I come to the end of my stint here, I leave with the hope that these are first steps in the right direction to creating positive, better communities, better places, beginning with one dot on the globe, Isla Vista. I leave you with one last thought. More than 50 years ago, in the first Urban Design Conference, Lloyd Rodman said, "We live in a peculiar time. What we want can be made to happen." And here I stand before you 50 years later thinking, how true is that of our time now? I hand it over to Kim with what he went on to say, the solution is in your backyard.
It takes an outsider to come in and tell us what we actually already know deeply, but have not been able to clearly articulate it. And the solution is in your backyard, and the solution is in the problem. And instead of your mother telling you, don't go looking for trouble, go look for trouble. And that's what we did. And so I'm just going to give you a little bit of, we have the view from the bottom up and the zoom back from Seetha, and I just wanted to sort of tell you how can this be demonstrated? How can we actually actualize those simple steps? And the currency and the quality of students here that I've worked with are really testament to this. And the other thing is, with these bureaucratic structures, like the university with multi-generational operational parallel universes, we really do want to move beyond nimbly and flexibly. And so what you do is you put on paper whatever the university wants to know, and then you run your operation however you need to run it. And so I have the Friday Academy, although I'm in the art department and I teach at UCSB. And in the Friday Academy, we have a slogan, public or perish, instead of publish or perish. The Friday Academy is an ongoing temporary instructional environment within the university setting that maintains its own academic calendar for year-round project-based curricular initiatives through an itinerant classroom setting, the idea of mobility and movement. So I'm just going to take you through a really quick project. Just some of the ideas that came out of this project, we had 2 used shipping containers donated to us for repurposing. The idea of the open classroom, that speaks for itself, moving out of this situation into the real world. Taking on large-scale and global problems. There was a surplus of cargo containers when nothing was there was nothing to send back to China worth its trip, and they were building up at the ports. So the idea of taking on a large, timely scale project, but at a very intimate level. The idea of co-teaching and co-learning, the idea of we are lateral, we are parallel with our students, we're connectors, we're not overseers, we're not regulators, we actually collaborate with them. Secondly, real skills in the real world. There's nothing more effective than handing students 2 huge shipping containers and telling them to make it into habitable space, and they do it, and they get a lot out of it. The idea, as I'm an arts professor, aesthetics and the sculptural opportunities in any problem, whether it's functional or imaginative. The idea of functional and livable. Can we contribute as artists to a livable environment? And then habitable and sustainable. Can we sustain that idea simply with what tools we have and the resources we have available to us? We did not, all of the materials in this project were repurposed. They're all reused materials. The second thing is bringing it back to the local and bringing us into IV. The idea of can students actually show us the stewardship of their town by hosting their creativity for the community to engage with and benefit from. And the students actually took on a renovation project of a bakery, a local bakery in Isla Vista, and we're with a higher ideal to make it a civic and communal space with a gallery, with a programmable space to engage in socially. The idea that the economic is tied to the social, that they aren't one or if you isolate one, you don't get a sustainable economic model. And then the true gift of young people and energy is the capacity for collectivity and participation. And so just very quickly, the connection and alignments of the dots is really, the dots are there, they just need to simply be connected and aligned. The idea that we are moving towards this idea of a lateral, connective line of faculty, student, professional community coming together, and the notion of a backyard next door, radically local knowledge commons. And instead of a University of California of Santa Barbara, we're a university community public research laboratory. Remember, I can change the name unofficially. So the expanded place of the university is imaginative, immersive, inclusive, locally embedded, public, participatory, and celebratory. Thank you.